Okay, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA here today to talk with rising Australian MMA star, Mr. Colby Thicknesse. Thanks for your time, man.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me on.
Man, normally, lately we've been talking to quite a few legends of the game, guys that have been in this game forever at the peak or the end of their career. And now it's nice to change things up and have a fresh new face. The first guy I've kind of talked to that's a rising star. So pretty interesting.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Happy to be one.
So, man, we'll kick straight into it. I've listened to a few of your podcasts. You've been pretty active on the social media, man, which is a good thing, I think. Good to start out now, and you can build yourself, build your brand, you know. You started with wrestling. You mentioned you and your twin brother used to boo a little bit, and then your father took you to a PCYC. So you started out in wrestling, which is kind of unusual in Australia, right? Because there's not a big wrestling scene.
Yeah, definitely. The wrestling culture is probably one of the smallest sports I could almost think of in Australia almost, because we, like I said, we did out our local PCYC, and I remember some of the classes it might only be maybe 10, 15 people max for 2 classes a week sort of thing. And then competitions you would have once a month or everything like that. And then I think it was something like $5 entry, and you might get maybe 30 people for the whole tournament sort of thing. So it's such a small sport sort of thing. But that being said, good thing about it being so sort of small and that you could really sort of get that real one-on-one personal time with the training and that. And I had some good wrestling coaches like an Australian level. So that was very good for the sort of ages 6 to like 13, just to be able to sort of really hone in on that one sort of martial arts stuff.
Yeah, man. And there's in Australia, I know there's people that come and go from some of the Eastern Bloc countries, etc., where it is very strong, and that can help the scene a bit, right? There are a few really good wrestlers around Australia that have come from international, yeah.
Oh, 100% there is. I was too young to sort of work with any of them, but I would see a few of the guys traveling out from Sydney and that, and like you said, the Eastern guys and everything like that, they would come over from overseas, and they would either open up their own sort of gyms and that and train, or they'll just jump in and start sort of coaching at new gyms and that. And I was fortunate enough to see some of them guys like compete, and they're at a very high level.
Yeah. Did you have anything to do with Larry Papadopoulos out of interest? Just because I know this guy pretty well.
He's an old shoot fighter guy, isn't he? I don't think personally, but no, he would have reffed a lot of my matches, because I remember when I was little, and my dad used to always say when he was reffing, every single time, without being like, that guy used to be a really good fighter. But yeah, he reffed it off probably at least I reckon about 20 of my sort of junior matches for sure, easily.
Yeah, awesome. No, he's a good friend of mine, and I know he's involved in the wrestling scene over there. Yeah, cool.
That's awesome.
Man, so then you progressed pretty naturally through to BJJ. You mentioned you had a bit of a go at stand-up, but you were drawn pretty much to the BJJ probably because it kind of links in with wrestling, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly right. It was a lot easier to sort of use my wrestling and go straight into jiu-jitsu and not compete straight away, but be able to sort of hold my own at training and everything, because it's still a grappling art. Whereas me going from grappling to a striking art, I had like no foundations or anything, so there's a lot bigger sort of skill difference in them, and obviously sort of gravitate to whatever you're good at. So me being naturally better at the grappling because of the experience, I sort of stuck out with the grappling originally.
Yeah. And on that, like you go from MMA to BJJ. Now you're a black belt already, you mentioned, right?
Brown belt.
Brown belt, nearly there, man.
Brown belt, yeah. No,
it's good, man. I noticed on your Facebook friends list, you also have Rodney Ellis. Do you know that guy?
Rodney Ellis. I don't know. I got a lot of friends on Facebook.
He's another good black belt in Sydney. I just wondered if there was a connection there.
Okay.
No worries, man.
Maybe I've been out of the jiu-jitsu scene for a fair while though, to be honest. I used to, as you know, when I was back probably probably 13 or 14 to about 17, I was doing almost a comp a month in that, and I just sort of really immersed myself. But as soon as I went to MMA, I sort of separated from, I think I've done maybe 1 or 2 grappling competitions since I started fighting, which was almost 4 years ago now.
Yep. And on that, like, so you mentioned that's your skill set, so you naturally gravitated to BJJ. Obviously, you've been training to stand up for some time. You're competing in MMA, so you've been doing quite a bit. Just wondered, like, is that because that your style is a wrestling-based style, that's what you're drawn to? Is the goal to just continue with that as your strength, or is your goal to be a totally all-rounded fighter and make your stand-up the same level as your grappling?
100%. I think the days of being like a specialist are almost coming to an end, sort of thing. Like you have to be very well rounded. Like even though grappling's my strong suit, I still think I'm very comfortable with most guys on the feet. Sort of I can hold my own and everything. And I do believe that I don't think you can sort of just be Damien Meyer anymore and sort of try and get to the top level like that. You have to be able to put it all together. The kickboxing, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, the wall work. There's so many little things that you have to sort of stay on top of now, where you can't just sort of be that one real dominant style. I honestly think maybe even Khabib, a lot of people think he was just like that real dominant wrestler, but a lot of the things he did on the feet were very smart, very calculated to actually set up his takedowns. It wasn't like it was just rushing in, panic shooting when people were punching him out. So I think you do need to be that sort of well-versed martial artist these days.
Yep. Man, and talking about that sort of thing, as we're talking about stand-up based fighters, etc. I noticed that you mentioned a few names in your interviews and that you like some of the CKB guys, Adesanya, etc. And these guys are heavy strikers rather than grapplers. I wondered if first of all you would like to progress to kind of be at their sort of level, and secondly, is there any options of doing any training with them in the future? Is that something that's in the back of your mind that you wouldn't mind hooking up with them?
Yeah, I honestly believe probably Israel is probably the best striker in the UFC. So obviously, if you can sort of emulate and take a few things from the best striker, that's where you want to be. Obviously, getting to that level is hard because he's would have had over 100 combat sports
exactly,
fights now.
Right.
So it's ridiculous. But
yeah,
hopefully, I think we will I will eventually be able to travel and train over there. I'll just hopefully jump on with Volko's camp when he goes over there and head over there with him. But who knows? It sort of all depends on timing, because we just went into a lockdown again for fucking some COVID reasons. So they sort of cut off all the travel and everything like that. So, but eventually, I'll definitely get over there and hopefully start doing like parts of camp over there and just sort of follow what Volko does.
Cool, man. And what would you say are the gaps between, like, just talking about stand-up for now, just watching your fights? I'm a stand-up guy, kind of thinking about that stuff. What do you see the gaps between yourself and someone like Adesanya or Dan Hooker or Volk or something?
Oh, there's heaps. The biggest one's probably being comfortable, I think, because you can also, everywhere that they get put, they're always comfortable. And I think it's just experience, because if you look at them guys, they're so flowy. They react. Their fight IQ is on point, so they can make a lot of adjustments on the fly where it's a little bit slower. Plus, their technique's a lot crisper. But I do believe since my last fight in November to now, my stand-up have leveled up completely. So I cannot wait to sort of show off a new skill set, show how much more comfortable I am on the feet. Like I'm a lot more flowy now. I've had a lot more sort of diverse striking that I'm comfortable. I'm more than happy to stay on the feet for 15 minutes if we need to, sort of thing. So I think my next fight is really going to show that progression of my striking, which is what I want to show off.
Awesome, man. So on that topic, when is your next fight and what's the plan?
So it was originally meant to be July 17th. So 9 days from now, but COVID, we actually went into a lockdown 2 weeks ago and we got another week of it. Of course, I won't get in, but it's just a pain in the ass. But they rescheduled it to August 7th now. So I added about another 3 weeks onto camp. And I'm fighting it's on the Gold Coast, and I'm fighting a bloke called Nicholas Kren. I think he was 2-0 as an amateur, or 2-1 as an amateur. He's making his pro debut in MMA, but he was a pro boxer. I think he had probably 10 amateur fights. He had 1 or 2 pro boxing fights. So it's a perfect fight for me to be able to sort of show off my stand-up levels, how much I've improved and everything. So I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds like a test, man, coming up against a decent boxer with the boxing experience.
Yeah, I can't wait for it.
Yeah, that's interesting that you kind of talk about the chance to test your stand-up. I think I'll be the opposite. I'll be going, this is giving me a chance to show my wrestling douche straight down.
Oh, don't get me wrong. It's always he's a white belt on the ground, so the plan is always going to be eventually get it to the feet. Get it to the ground and secure the finish, TKO or submission wise. But I just don't want. I'm just not. I think people think, oh, he's fighting a boxer so much, just sort of try and panic shoot and rush. But I want to show like I'm more than comfortable to stand on my feet, sort of work out for different ranges. I'm not going to fight a boxer in a boxing range. We're going to fight him at a kickboxing range, or MMA range. Obviously, we've been game planning for different tactics and that to use. So I really just want to be able to show off a sort of, like I always say about the levels I've evolved since my previous fight.
Yeah, it depends how he comes out too. If he's very boxing based, you can Dustin Poirier his calves, mate, and
exactly
take
the
him out.
lead leg heavy, or the sort of it depends what sort of style. If he wants to play that sort of slip and counter, there's a lot of different styles, but where I'm prepared for all of them.
Awesome, man. So tell us, you're from down south of Sydney, Shellharbour sort of way, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so I live out Mount Warrigal and I train out of sort of Windang, and the closest like big city would be probably Wollongong. Yes.
Yeah, Windang. Wow, sounds cool. At Shellharbour,
good
man.
place, Windang.
Shellharbour, actually, many moons ago, back when I was competing, I fought kickboxing in Shellharbour for my second fight. So it was a lot.
I didn't even know they had kickboxing.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, man.
They had kickboxing in Shellharbour, eh?
It would have been before you were born, bro. So
yeah, I was going to say it would have been a while ago.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if
awesome.
There was a guy teaching down that way before called Danny Jones. I don't know if you know that guy. He
I haven't met him, but I know him because I think he still teaches around this area.
Yeah, he was a pretty well-known trainer back then, and it was one of his guys. Yeah, but it's a beautiful part of the world, man. I hadn't really been down there until then. It's a nice coastal area, right? Beautiful beaches and everything.
Oh, bro, like I've been to Vegas, like Texas, Thailand, and that, and like honestly, like people's like, oh, however you've been, like, where would you prefer to live? I'm like where I am right now. Like it's such, you got everything. You got beaches, lakes, good food, just like for even the culture and everything. It's just perfect living down here. I can't complain.
Yeah, true, man. And just on that, this actually I didn't check before. This logo behind me is the right logo, right?
Yeah, Freestyle MMA.
Just want to check. I'll just because it said something else on your. There's another name for the gym, right? It's not just Freestyle MMA. It's Freestyle.
Freestyle Fighting Gym. Yep.
Yeah, so I was worried it wasn't the right one.
Yeah.
I should have checked first.
They're both sweet.
Cool. So coming from your gym is actually the same gym that Alex Volkanovski is training out of. That's correct.
Yep, correct.
Beautiful. So you're in good company there. I just want to know a bit about your gym. Like, how is it there? You mentioned about the good banter, good atmosphere, etc.
Yeah, oh man, the gym's awesome. We cater from all levels. We have like complete newbies walking into. We obviously have a pro fighting team in that now. Then we get a lot of guys coming down to train with us, like Malaki, Coolabell, Philpott, all them boys for when Volko's in camp and that. And just it's just a good gym environment. So we get our 2 sessions a day in there, and it's just like I said, it's just good vibes. Like any gym, you can't really be a sort of dickhead or a douchebag with that and sort of work out there. So Joey's good at weaving anybody who thinks they're a bit like a cut above the rest. He gets rid of them pretty quickly. But yeah, that's like I said, the training's good. It's good people. It's just it's like most MMA gyms. It's going to be hard to find. It's hard to find good fighters at a shit gym sort of thing. Most good fighters come from good gyms, I find.
That's awesome, man. It's good. When one ship rises, all the other ships rise, right? Like Volko goes up, and obviously has been for a while, but that will draw all you guys up. And then, like you said, some great training partners coming down. Who else have you had down there? You said Jamie Malaki. Sorry, who else did you mention?
Josh Coolabell, Alan Philpott, Arlene Blanco comes down, does parts of the camp now. We've had Tyson Pedro. We've had a fair few guys. Sort of a lot of the guys from Sydney and that will come down and help Volko out when he gets into camp.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's great because then you get that opportunity to be exposed to those guys as well, bring your game up, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Again, because with Volko's camp, we normally sort of bring a few boys down to stay. So then we get 2 sessions a day with like 2 or 3 UFC caliber guys, international level guys. It's the quality of training just sort of elevates everyone involved on it. That's
awesome, man. And you also teach at the gym down there, right?
Yeah, so I teach kids classes. I do a few I help out with classes if Joe's not able to teach them. And then I also do like for one-on-ones for like anything for like fitness, even just basics and everything like that. But yeah, I just love sort of involving myself in the martial arts whichever way I can.
Is that something that you see as your future, or have you got other apart from fighting, of course?
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm one of them guys who I sort of want to fight. I want to fight for as long as I can, but not in the sense to like I'm like 40, I'm beaten up and getting like you see some guys who should hang it up early. I just want to get in, get out, sort of make my run sort of thing. And after that, eventually, I want to either take over a gym or sort of open up my own gym and just sort of, teach and keep working myself around that sort of martial arts lifestyle.
Yeah, that's good, man. It's actually interesting kind of point. Like I was just thinking about it before while I was waiting for you. And, you know, like people might not understand, but in the game right now for you, there's not a lot of like reward as far as money goes, etc. So it's kind of like so what is it that drives a person like you, or like I said, your salaries or your money for fighting at an amateur level and into early pro level in Australia is next to nothing, right? So
Yeah.
what is it that drives you to keep working at it? Like what is it in you that makes you keep training and keep going hard?
I think there's pretty much two things. One of it's like the personal growth, and the other thing's the competition. So the personal growth, it's just like there's very other few things I feel like where you can just wake up each day and just like get your sessions and just work and just slowly sort of each day you're sort of bettering yourself. I love that aspect of it, and then just a constant competition aspect of it too. So a lot of people, they sort of always worry about their opponents and everything like that for the competitions, but I'm always in more of like a competition with myself sort of thing. Like I always like to sort of judge myself from where I am today to where I was last week, a month ago, etc., like that sort of thing. And that way I can always, because at the end of the day, opponents change and everything like that, and you can't always control the outcome, but you can sort of you're always in control of yourself, I believe. So if I can push a little extra 1-2% each workout and slowly grow that way, and just sort of little mental battles, say I got a hard session an hour on like an assault bike. So it's like a lactic threshold sort of session. And then all it is it's just every single Thursday morning, it's just a hard conditioning session. All I try and do is each Thursday try and do that 1-2% better than I did last week. And it's just that constant growth and just that like self competition. And that's the part I love about it.
That's good, man. I mean, you got such a positive mindset. It's really, really good to hear, man. Actually, I should mention in listening to your podcast and that, man, you come across as such a good guy, to be honest, man. Like,
super friendly. I appreciate that.
I reckon you're if you can get your your career going well and everything, I think you'll be a star, man, because you've got a great attitude.
I appreciate that, man.
I think you're probably a very marketable guy, you know, for any of these big bike companies, you know.
Yeah,
man.
Legend.
Yeah. So what was I gonna ask you? So you mentioned about having dreams and turning dreams into goals. What are your immediate goals? You mentioned about Australian circuit, and then from there, what are those goals that you've set?
Yeah, so I always say with interviews that a lot of people try and, I feel I'm too many young guys they're trying to be like the next John Jones. They want to sort of be that outlier who can go on and win the belt as young as they can in that. And I find so many people that do that, they sort of shoot themselves in the foot because they treat it as a sprint, not a marathon. But I always think John Jones, the exception's not the rule. If you look at pretty much every other champion, they sort of really took their time developing their craft in that. So I'm 22 now. I turned 22 about 3 weeks ago. So I'm more than happy to sort of just take my time and just slowly work my way up for the Australian circuit, get a few international fights, and then eventually when I'm ready, I'll start my UFC push and then get into the UFC, then eventually make my way up to a title and stuff like that. But like some people put dates and everything on that, but I think if you put too many deadlines on yourself from that, it can sort of distract you from the end goal, because who knows, you might get in. Volko's a good example. I think he got signed, and then 2 of the fights fell through, and that gave him like an extra 8 months of preparation or something. And who knows, that 8 months might have been the difference between him winning his first fight or losing it. And that's sort of, I want to be one of them guys who they get into the UFC and they can sort of just make their run through there. Like Izzy, if you look at what Brad Riddell and that's doing now, they sort of had that experience from outside and they go through. I don't want to be one of these guys who get in, they might win 1, lose 2, win 2, lose 1. I sort of want to get in there and sort of make the best run for myself that I can.
Yeah. There's some good guys to look up to, but that's hectic records behind the UFC run, right?
Bro, it's ridiculous. Hey, yeah, I think Brad's kickboxing record and even his MMA record, I think was on maybe 6-1 or 5-1 in that, but like he had the kickboxing experience and everything. I think Volko was 12-0 or 13-0 before he got signed. And it was like 5-0 as an amateur too. So yeah, there's a lot of experience behind there. I think see some guys, they get signed at sort of 6-0, 7-0, and they look good, but they still look pretty green compared to that UFC caliber. So you can see they're a bit more uncomfortable. Whereas I want to be able to jump in and they're like, oh no, this guy looks like he fits in, he belongs here.
Have you had anything to do with those CKB guys out of interest?
Yeah, I have. I've met all of them, but that's mainly actually me and Brad Riddell fought on the same show, the Wollongong War Show. So that was cool. And then so when they come over to train for that, but most of the interactions I've had were just when I went over to Vegas with Volko, and that one was same cards and that. So yeah, I've had a fair few in there, all a good bunch of guys, and it's cool to see their sort of training intensity and like philosophies, because it really aligns with the same sort of stuff that Volk's doing. And then you can see why it works, because their sort of intensity behind it. They train hard, but they train smart as well. Where a lot of guys are just train hard, and they burn themselves out. Whereas these guys, they train hard, they got everything on point, they're recovering well, they die at some point. So it's sort of like the good guys to look up to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like you mentioned, they are the guys that I've had something to do with are great. A few years back in this place where I'm sitting right now, actually, they came and competed in a show that was called Legend back then. There was Dan Hooker and Kai Kara France and heaps of other good guys from New Zealand. And apart from being like good fighters, you could see Dan Hooker was a killer from I was out the back with him warming up. I'm thinking, fuck, look at this guy on the pads, man. He's actually got a fucking amazing head kick, man. Just from back then, I'm like, fuck, look at this guy's head kick. And I haven't really seen it. You got one KO, I think, in UFC with a head kick against a Japanese guy, but I haven't really seen it because I'd like to see him flick that head kick up more, man, because he's got an awesome head kick. But yeah,
he's
nice guys.
On the feet. Oh yeah, absolutely legends. Like I feel like I always say, you can't sort of. I don't think douchebags and dickheads really last at the spot. They might be like able to be them sort of one-off guys, but it's very rarely you'll see them like a team of people who they're not sort of good people that are good fighters sort of thing. So yeah, CKB, pardon me, CKB boys and everything like that. They got a good team around them, good coaches. So it's sort of just that good friendly environment where everybody just sort of elevates each other.
Man, I dropped into their gym too. I went down to New Zealand and dropped into the gym and
nice.
I'd already talked to Dan before about a chat with him, and I was trying to hook up a private with Eugene, but unfortunately he was just a busy man at the time. And
I could imagine, hey.
Man, they got a gym full of killers, eh? Like it's packed. Like there was like a sparring day when I wandered in there, and it was like, I don't know, like more than 30 people sparring, and they're all like mad quality. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's what Volko was telling me. He's like, some of around you spar guys, and like they're just pro fighters with a few fights between him. Like, fuck, these guys are like almost UFC level when they're sparring and shit like that. So like, there's no easy rounds over there. Like everybody's on point, and that's awesome.
Exactly. Hey, I wanted to ask you. So you had your goals of UFC champ. So let's have a pretend tomorrow you got a call from your coach. He says you're fighting Moreno for the title, mate. What's your game plan? You got an 8-week camp to prepare.
Can I cut off a leg to make flyweight? Because fuck that.
Oh, that's not your weight.
No, I'm bantamweight.
Oh, bantamweight. Sorry, I was off then. So who's the champion in your weight division then?
Peter Young. No, fucking Sterling, because he.
I know which one's better, bro. I think I'd rather fight Moreno.
Yeah,
all right.
No.
Let's say it's Peter Young, because that wasn't really a loss, right? Okay, you're fighting Peter Young.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your game plan, man?
Fuck, Peter's good everywhere. That's one of our fights. I think you're just gonna have to try and, because I'm pretty friendly with his like wrestling coach, like Frank Hickman and that, and I've seen him train, and that bloke's a savage. Like, how would you beat Peter? I think you just sort of have to try and match his intensity. And I think Sterling had a right idea at the start with that volume sort of approach, where you just have to really try and overwhelm him. But then again, as you see, Peter's a savage sort of thing. So, and if you don't have a gas tank to do that volume for 25 minutes, you can sort of see what happened to Sterling, where it was sort of throwing caution to the wind, just real unorthodox strikes and that, which was sort of working a few with land and that. But I feel like you need, that was a sort of correct approach, I think, that volume approach. But I feel like you need to be a lot more calculated than how reckless Sterling was, because he blew his load in like 2 rounds, and after that he sort of was just getting dominated, and then he got gracefully kneed in the head and won him a title that way.
Out.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. Man, when you look at that, obviously you've paid attention to it because it's your division. Do you look at it and what's the feeling inside? Do you feel like, I can take these fucking guys later, or do you look at it and think, fuck, these guys are crazy? Like, what's the thoughts?
I feel like I always love watching the fights now. I try and like sort of pick up on habits, especially of like the good bantamweight guys. It's not so much like, I'm like, oh, if I have to fight them tomorrow, how would I go? It's more like, how do I see myself in 5-6 years against these guys? So it's not so much of me sort of, I'm not at that level where I'm able to sort of compare and I'll be able to compete with any of the top guys there. And I'm like, I'm more than happy to say that. But it's more right now when I'm watching them, I'm more trying to pick up little tendencies and just little tricks that they do that I can use, because I feel like if I'm trying to stay competitive with guys too far in front of me, there's still that sort of big skill difference there. Whereas I'm more looking at staying competitive with all the guys on the sort of the Australian circuit. And then once I get to there, then I can start looking towards the international. Then I can start looking to like more of a top caliber of promotions. Or I find like some guys, they win a few pro fights in the Australia scene. And they're like, oh, get me a contender contract, get me into the UFC straight away. And there's a massive skill difference, which I think some people don't really realize until it's too late and they're in there. So I'm more than aware of the massive skill differences in sort of different areas in that. So right now, when I'm watching them, I obviously always thought, I'm like, oh, I wonder how I'd go against that guy. But realistically, like, obviously not well at this point. But that's like I said, I'm not here to rush. I'm not trying to fight the top 10 UFC bantamweights in the next 2 years. I'm more than happy to take my time, grow my craft, and then when I'm ready, I know I step in there, and I want to be able to compete with them when I know that I'm ready to compete. I'm not looking to sort of try and get a fast track way through there.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And just to get there, you talk about like different skills, etc. Obviously, you like feel like your strength is in your wrestling, grappling, but there's still things to learn. Obviously, in wrestling, there's some high caliber people around the world. Do you think you would consider, apart from city kickboxing, would you consider going anywhere like the States or anywhere else, or you just feel like your gym's perfect, you got everything there?
Right now, I feel like our gym's pretty good. I feel like I would probably just hopefully follow Volko, like I said, over to city kickboxing, that because they got the wrestling and everything like that. But then again, I've done a fair bit of, when we would film into a TUFF and that, I was fortunate enough to do a lot of wrestling training and that with Frank Hickman, who was used to be him and George used to be the MMA and wrestling coaches at Tiger. And then even just doing the jiu-jitsu with Craig over and TUFF and that, it was good to sort of, pardon me, have each guy in the specialist area and sort of realize the skill difference that way. Like, I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Like, I'm normally pretty happy with how I go in jiu-jitsu, but I went and rolled with Craig Jones and I felt like a no-shot. I felt like it was my first day at jiu-jitsu. So it was ridiculous. So there's massive sort of skill differences there. But I feel like as long as you got that good team around you, like with Volko, he's got Eugene, Brad, Joe Lopez, all these sort of guys looking after him. And then he's got Frankie with wrestling. When he goes to City, he got Andre in that. So I feel like right now, and as you can see, it's obviously working for him sort of thing. I feel like if people try and cross-train too much, they're like, oh, I do wrestling here, jiu-jitsu there, boxing here, kickboxing here. It's hard to sort of put it all together. But if you can have that actual good, solid, like Fundamation MMA team around you, I feel like that's the best way to sort of go forward.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes that separation, especially if the coaches are based in their own art, it might not blend together that well, right? Like a full Thai boxer doesn't understand they need to be prepared for a takedown, etc. So yeah, they don't always blend together. It's kind of cool that some of the new age guys like you that can train with people that understand everything, right?
Yeah, exactly right. We see a lot of even just like a good example of guys with jiu-jitsu towards a war in MMA fights, whereas they'll get put on their back and they think it's not so much a jiu-jitsu match, but they're more than happy to sort of play that guard and half guard, where realistically, if you're there in MMA, you're losing. Should we try and sort of kick him off, bump yourself up? A perfect example is it was Volko versus Jeremy Kennedy, where Volko took him down against the cage a couple of times, and Jeremy Kennedy, instead of trying to find space, create space and get him up, obviously Volko was trying to hold him down, but he was more than happy to sort of lock his legs into a half guard and sort of try and force a jiu-jitsu exchange with Volko, where in MMA you can't really do that, because that fight, Volko just poshed it up and punched the shit out of him for 2 rounds until he got the finish on the ground. So I feel like you need to sort of differentiate between each martial arts. Like, there's good things for wrestling, but there's wrestling for MMA, jiu-jitsu for MMA, and everything like that.
Yeah, it's like there's a good clip online of Khabib wrestling with a standout wrestler. You see that one? He's wrestling with like a junior
American
wrestler.
high school. Yeah, I know that.
How good is that? That's like a kind of a prime example. Like Khabib's wrestling for MMA, and that guy's just pure wrestling based, and you can see that difference, right?
Yeah, exactly right, for sure.
So you mentioned about Craig Jones. That's actually a bit of a pipe dream that'll never happen in my head because I've got a family to support. But I think it'd be so good to go over to, where are they now? They're in like South America.
Puerto Rico.
Right? Puerto Rico, yeah. Training with the Donna Death Squad. That'd just be awesome, man. I think that'd just be an amazing thing to go and train with them. It'd be awesome if you ever got the chance to do a little bit of time with them. And the thing is that Donaher also is very aware of MMA as well, so he can teach people he's actually Gary Tonnen's MMA coach, strangely enough.
I didn't know that, hey. Yeah, I didn't even know that, hey.
Yeah,
but he does it all. But that guy, he's really good. He's just real on that sort of like concepts and like principles-based philosophy of teaching, and that's sort of if you look at a lot of the high-level guys now, they're so much teaching moves, they're teaching more concepts and that, and then you sort of use them concepts and you can sort of adapt them to the different situations. Whereas a lot of it's good at the start to just sort of show the technique, but then you got to be aware of why that technique worked, when to do it, when not to do it, what adjustments to make with their adjustments and stuff like that.
Yep. Man, so just on to the next thing, I was just thinking of some of your key sort of strengths. I noticed in your some of your old BJJ footage you were doing. You seem to hit the arm bar a lot in some of your MMA fights. You hit the rear naked choke,
rear naked. Yep.
What else do you think's your kind of strengths? What sort of moves?
What moves do I like? Rear naked. I love any sort of form of like back control on that. Like that's back and on the ground. Back's like whenever I grab someone, there's a lot. I have a few sequences where it's pretty much like I won't give too much away, but basically it's sort of I have a few traps where I either set people up for submissions or I'm forcing them to give me the back. And a lot of times, good guys are aware of that the submission threat's coming, so they give me the back. But I actually have back's my preferred position. So back control. I haven't been doing as many arm bars as lately, but I've been smashing out triangles lately. So who knows? I might pull out a triangle in my next fight. I've been loving triangles. Awesome.
What about the stand up? What do you got there? What do you feel is your good sort of strength with the stand up?
What's my bet? I've been working a lot on my kicks and everything like that, and I feel like I want to really showcase my kicking ability and just sort of different techniques of kicks and everything. So sort of setups, fakes, and just using my kicks to set up my punches and using my kicks to set up my takedowns and that. So this next fight, that's what I really want to showcase. Just all this sort of different diversity in strikes and that I've been working on.
Yeah, man, that's cool. What's that? There's a wrestler coming up to this weekend. That's not a wrestler, a BJJ guy coming up this weekend that's fighting.
Ryan
Hall. Yeah, I'm interested to see how this guy goes. Right, he's got the weird sort of. I was just thinking of it when you're talking about kicking. I'm thinking ground fighter guy that's learning some kicks. He always does some crazy kicks and stuff. What do you think about him coming out? His fight?
He's good fun. He's got like that sort of old school like Gracie style where he does like that real sort of wide stance, tries to do some knee stops and big spinning back kicks and just tries to roll under for leg locks and everything like that. Yeah. I think he's fantastic on the ground, but I want to see how he goes against, obviously, like once he gets to like the top 15 in that, but that poor bloke just can't catch a break. No one wants to fight him.
Yeah. I listened to some interviews on him too, and he was saying that no one wants to fight him, but he's got his own standards as well. He doesn't want to go backwards, yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Which is fair play to him. He's one of the best grapplers in the world, so there's no point in him fighting sort of guys ranked behind him, which won't get him anywhere, sort of thing.
Yeah. Just on another topic, it popped into my head before when we were talking about training different places. Last week I talked to Jeff Fenech. I don't know if you ever heard of Jeff Fenech before. Do you know him?
Yeah, boxer. Yep.
Yeah, like he's super famous, man. When I'm young, he was like the number one guy in Australia as far as sports goes. Like no one that I've known in my whole lifetime actually in Australia has been as popular as he was in his peak. Now he's a bit more infamous, etc. Bad and good. But yeah, anyway, I was talking to him the other day. I was lucky enough to have a chat with him. And he mentioned about, I asked him if he's interested in MMA, etc. And he said, they should come and do some boxing. I'd love to have Conor McGregor give me a call and I can show him a bit more boxing and that. It just seems like kind of interesting, man. Would you ever consider that? Like Australia's got such a steeped history in boxing, and there are guys that actually, in the opposite side of wrestling, there's there's some very good boxing coaches. Would you ever consider something like that, like Jeff Fenech, for a bit of boxing action? Because he sounded really open to it. I just think it sounds cool.
Man, I think that would be awesome, mate. Like I said, you can always learn the stuff from everyone, especially high-level guys like that. Even if you look at what Tim Tszyu just fought last night, like his level of boxing, he might be few more fights, he might be one of Australia's sort of top boxing's like fighters ever, sort of thing. And the way he's fighting, he's performing great. So we have a lot of good boxers and that coming up and everything. So I feel like if I had a chance to sort of learn from like a boxing coach who understood the aspect of MMA and everything, I think that would be a perfect good opportunity. It'd be silly to say no.
Yeah. Actually, just mentioning Tim Tszyu, I just watched the highlights. I didn't watch a fight. He finished him with a left rip, didn't he? Left rip to the body.
Yeah, body shot. Yeah.
Sneaky, yeah, just snuck it in.
Fight him on like a week's notice. Oh, that would suck.
But that guy was moving up one division too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, short notice. Yeah, jumped up. Fair play to him. Fucking ballsy.
Yeah, man. Just another thing about your interviews I was listening to. You're a lucky guy, man. You got to, because of the Volt connection, you got to go over to the States, be involved with Ultimate Fighter, meet Joe Rogan. I'm fucking jealous, bro.
Oh, bro, that was awesome, eh? Yeah, man. He's a legend, eh? So, yeah, so we went to his studio, obviously, for Volker to film his podcast and that. And then you have to do these, like, COVID tests there, and they take about 15 minutes. So, like, the 15 minutes before we're waiting, it was just cool, just sit down, have a chat with him, watch the podcast live. He came out, have another chat with us. Like, yeah, it's a real experience, because I've been watching him since I was a little kid on, like, UFC. Then, obviously, as I got older, I started, like, as every bloke does, to get into his podcast. And I listen to, like, every episode religiously. And then a few years down the line, I'm sort of standing next to guys having a casual conversation. It was fucking surreal, eh?
Yeah. How did it feel, man? Like, how does he feel? Like, you know, you can see things on TV, but being next to someone and interacting with him is different. So how does he feel, man? Like,
I feel like he's a little bit different, but it's different in a good way, sort of thing. I feel like sometimes with his interviews, he sort of tries not to offend too many people that anymore and that. But when I was talking about it, was just like chatting with one of the boys, like cracking jokes, just like taking a piss out of each other, just like good vibes. That, like, honestly, just sort of like, he's one of the guys who just walks into a room and he's just like instantly like, oh, this guy's like, he's a good guy, sort of thing. He just fits in. He's like just one of the boys, sort of thing. Like, there's no ego, there's no sort of walking like, oh, do you know who I am, sort of thing. He's even like showing to me, my coach and everything, like gave us the time of day and everything. Just a great guy.
Yeah, it's good, man. Because like you said, it could be the other way, right? That they just feel like they're too good for dealing with normal people. But if he's down to earth, that's pretty good, eh?
Yeah, it was amazing.
And the Ultimate Fighter, man, just I know you've talked about it a bit before, how you may be interested in something like that in the future, etc. But you said it was kind of good training with some of these guys, etc.
Yeah, it was great, because I'm a 135er and 8 of the guys there were 135ers. So it was sort of cool just to be able to, we had 4 of them on our team, or everyone on the show was a good bunch of guys. But it was awesome having the 2 practices a day. I would either sort of help out with the boys, because how it was scheduled, we'd have a few fighting at the same time. So I'd just be a body for them. Then when the boys weren't fighting, we'll be able to get working. So I was able to get grappling rounds, sparring rounds, drilling. I was able to sort of just be a part of the team in that aspect as well, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, man. Would you consider going into one of those trials or anything in the future? I just remember, I don't know if they still do it the same way, but they used to have like trials and people can go in and demonstrate what they can do in front of everyone, right?
Yeah, so pre-COVID, that's was how they did this. But with that one, I think they just did online applications only. But after watching it, I'd love to be on it. It would be annoying because the poor blokes at the house had like no doors. They weren't allowed music. They were allowed books, were only the Bible and Quran. Like, there was like no form of entertainment there. But I'm not too bad with that sort of stuff. Like, at the end of the day, like, they're getting paid to be there. Like, all you have to do is just wake up, train twice a day, and sort of do your own thing. So, man, I do that pretty much anyway at home. So if I could be on a TV show for it and get to fight, why not?
That's cool, man. Actually, a few years ago, there was a Ultimate Fighter China, and I actually got to be the pad holder during that the selection process. There was only one, just me. I was the only pad holder, so I got to run all these guys through the pads while they selected. It was kind of cool, kind of cool to be involved. Yeah. Cool. Even paid me, which is strange. You don't really usually get paid for stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, I did.
I thought I was just doing it like for free and that sort of thing, just be part of the show. But imagine that, like, your job's like, oh, what do you do? I was like, oh, I examine fighters for a TV show. It's like awesome. Man,
onto another question. I was listen to you talking. You're talking about, like you said, you had pretty shit results in school and stuff like that. It's funny because you seem like such a clued up guy, bro. Like you seem very,
Yeah.
very intelligent, and I'd imagine you could do really well if you wanted to.
Yep.
Why the shit results? Just not focused on that thing, and
Yeah.
secondly.
Well.
Secondly, do you have a
You go,
plan
yeah.
B, bro? Secondly, do you have a plan B? Obviously, you're fixed on the idea of being a coach, etc. But is there any other sort of plan Bs as far as studying or anything like that? Just out of interest.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So yeah, I wouldn't say I was. It wasn't necessarily that I was just terrible at school results wise for like you said, like smart stuff. It was just more like that lack of sort of effort, purely because I was studying that TAFE as well. It's like a sort of how. Like I was doing a personal training course that took me out of school for 1 day a week.
Yeah.
And so I was sort of forced to be at school so I could do that training sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, with school and that, people normally go to like college or university or that. And because I had no interest in that straight away, it was sort of just me just forced to be in that environment. I still did really well in like PDHP, like physical education subject. That's what I enjoyed. But like maths and English was just, obviously I could have applied myself better, but obviously being like 17, 18, I just had no interest in it sort of thing. But with the second part, that secondary sort of education and plan B and stuff like that, right now, there's no real focus on it, but it's always in the back of your mind and that sort of thing. I don't think I would do something like, I'm more of a sort of, I know there's different types of learning. You get like visual, what is it, like kinesthetic and stuff like that. I'm someone else sort of has to like to be like hands-on and everything with that. I could see myself sort of maybe going back once my fighting career and getting like a studying degree and something like that. But right now, I'm not really focused on it, to be honest. Like, I feel like if you put too much plan into your plan B, it becomes your plan A. Whereas I'm more than happy to just go all out and plan A. Whatever happens, happens. Like, at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out when you're 30, you still got fucking another 50, 60 years to live your life and figure things out. So it's not the end of the world if something doesn't work out.
That's true, man. Just as an old fella, bro, I've been around the traps for a while, a bit longer than you. I recommend just like, using your drive, like, because you're going to have a killer drive for doing things that are beneficial for you. I just recommend dropping a course in there every now and again, whether it's, and you can do courses that are related to your field, man. You can do, hands-on type of physical training type courses and all that stuff that's related to your interest, man. So I just recommend drop one of them every now and again, because it'll add up at the end. You start now, even 100%. If it's like jiu-jitsu, you got to keep going. It's the same thing. If you just tick a box here and there as you go, and then by the end, when you're older, you'll see you've got like a, so much experience and that'll just help you. Like I was a bit late. This is in hindsight. I've done it later in my life, but I reckon I wish I'd done it when I was a little bit earlier. So just keep it in your head, bro.
That's good advice, man. I'll take into consideration for sure, bro.
Man, so the other point of interest, there's only a couple more things. I hope you're okay to talk a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'm happy, bro.
Cool. Just because I kind of grew up in security as well. Similar thing. I was fighting, not at your level probably, but I was fighting stand up, and then I'd started in security because it kind of links together in a way, right? Like you're doing martial arts, you're doing stuff to be able to handle people, and it's kind of related because you get the chance sometimes to actually be able to test your skills. You feel confident, and you can try and use what you learn, especially being in a grappling sort of art. What drew you to it, man? Is it just that was what was available? Was it that connection, or why did you start security?
My coach is actually my boss for security. So he owns a security company I work for. Yeah. So pretty much like I was training at the gym, and he's like, as soon as you turn 18, if you want to sort of work a few nights a week doing security for me and that. So like I'm 22 now and I still have pretty much a baby face. So back 4 years ago, I looked like I was like 12 years old. And I remember my first few shifts, like I have to wear like a high vis and that. I'm like, I obviously like being green and everything to the industry. I'm like, you have to leave, mate. And they're like, sort of look at me. They're like, do you even work here sort of thing? You look like you're like 16 years old. I used to get a lot of shit for that, but obviously once you get more comfortable, you're a lot better at sort of reading situations, de-escalating situations and that now. I pretty much only do the security like one night a week now sort of thing, because I'm focusing a lot more on like my personal training, just trying to gather clients, teach classes, everything like that. But I do think security is was a good job for me for that sort of period of time where it sort of was good because it took me into the club setting, but it made me also hate the club settings. They do know, like, there's nothing worse than dealing with four drunk people at fucking 1:30 a.m. where you got to be at training at 9:30 the next morning, sort of thing. So it really can sort of turn you off that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's true, man. But the good thing too, if you work and like you can't go out at night, right? So it kind of helps.
Exactly. You get paid.
Too.
Yeah, exactly right. You're getting paid to almost be out in a sense.
Yeah, and you mentioned about like being a little guy. I'm a pretty skinny guy, a bit tall, but I'm pretty skinny as well. It's kind of tricky, right? Like in the early days, you're doing security, and you maybe don't even feel that confident, but then in time you kind of realize it can almost be a benefit, because if you're like a big monster comes up to guys, they tend to bridge up back for some reason. But if someone that's not as threatening comes up and just talks to them like a normal person, you can have some more success with dealing with troubled people, you know?
Yeah, well, that's what I found, like, because I've worked with like a big bunch, like down here we have a lot of like islanders and that, and they go try and kick someone out, and it's just like that hands-on brute force approach straight away, where I'm like, bro, just have a conversation. I'm like 95% of the time, if not more, you can just have a conversation with someone, explain the situation, and most of the time they're going to leave. So hassle-free in that. Whereas at the start, I was a bit more hesitant with that. Like if someone would sort of arc up back at me, I'd sort of arc back up at them, and that's how the situations escalate, and then it can end up getting into like pushing shoves and fights and stuff like that. But now I'm just real chilled with it. Like I don't think I've had to put my hands on anyone like the last 2 years of work, and it's all just diffusing the situation, just explaining, just trying to use the words and everything just to get them out that way, which is so much less hassle at the end of the day and so much safer.
Yeah, man. It's actually funny, like thinking back at when I was your age doing security, and everyone you're with, they're like a pack of hungry dogs, man, like trying to escalate things and trying to show how tough they are, and they like the conflict, a lot of guys, when they're young in security. And then as you progress and you get to like my age, you just like, fuck, you just don't want problems, man. You just want to solve the problems, finish it peacefully. You just don't want the drama. Whereas when you're young, you kind of want the drama. It's very different.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, exactly. My first 2 years, like probably first 1 or 2 years, like if something would kick off, I'd be like, oh yes, I can sort of jump in, get involved in it. But now if something kicks off, I'm just like, oh, for fuck's sake. I'm like, what? Can't we just be like 30, bro? Just like be an adult.
Exactly.
Instead of like, yeah.
And the other thing I was thinking, like, I know obviously you can't like do crazy stuff when you're in security. It's, it's not acceptable to really be hurting people, etc. So you find the size thing can be a bit of a struggle, because I know you got the skills, etc. But when you're just trying to grab an arm of a guy that's in 100 kgs, it might not be as easy as if you did choke him out and drag him out or something,
I've had to do that one a few times, but like that was when I first sort of started that. But now it's not too bad. I think because obviously I'm not a massive guy or anything like that, but I feel like if you could just, like I always say, if I just actually have a chat with someone and explain the situation, a lot of times it's just about calming them down, explain it. Because at the end of the day, people who are getting like kicked out, or if they have issues with that, they're not out there looking to fight or anything. They're just looking to have a fun time. It's normally something goes wrong to sort of set them off. Then I always try and find that thing that sets them off, sort of fix that problem, and then sort of end the situation that way. Whereas, like at the start, like if some big guy arcing up, I'm like, oh, fuck, I can take you. So just start things that way. And it always ends to more problems than it solves. So yeah, right now I'm a lot more sort of like diplomatic with it. Just try and use the words and just, de-escalate the situations, fizzle it out, and sort of go that way. And hardly ever like even have to touch anyone, let alone like push, shove, grab, or anything like that now.
Yeah, that's good, man. It's good that you learn the skill, man. You learn that.
Exactly
back
right.
In the early days, they used to call it verbal judo.
There's a book on that, isn't there? Actually, I think.
Probably, man. I don't know. This term I've heard floating around since I started. Yeah. They always encourage it in like professional companies that are dealing with security. They're always talking about de-escalation and conflict resolution, all this stuff, that just a way of making it peaceful and less problems, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's just at the end of the day, it's going to solve a lot more problems that way. It's going to cause a lot less issues.
True. So back on the fighting, man. Last sort of question I want to ask. I was going to talk about McGregor Poirier, but fuck, everyone's talking about it. I'm kind of sick of it.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next one that I looked that's kind of notable. There's a few fights coming up, but nothing that really fucking makes me interested, except for maybe Sandhagen and Dillashaw. What are your thoughts on that one?
That's a tough fight. I feel like we don't know how long obviously TJ got caught EPOs and everything like that, and he's saying he just used it for the Cejudo fight. But if you look back to the clips of Cody Garbrandt saying he taught everyone at Team Alpha how to do it, so I don't know how much that's going to sort of factor in now that he's off the juice and everything, and I don't know how much that I don't personally think ring rust is a massive thing if you're in the training room and that, but at that sort of UFC level with the crowds and everything back, it could be a bit sort of different. But I hope Sandhagen gets it, and I personally, I think he will, to be honest. I think TJ's just sort of been out too long and just sort of shot himself in the foot with this whole EPO saga and everything like that. Don't get me wrong, I think it's going to be a very competitive fight, but I think Sandhagen should take it.
I just imagine the psychological pressure on Dillashaw too, right? Like so much pressure for him to be,
right.
You know, everyone's watching him, like everyone fucking hates him. He'll just have all this hate coming towards his way, and everyone will be happy if he loses and stuff. So you'd have a lot of pressure on him, right?
Spot on. Yeah, well, even if he did have to, if he was sort of juicing before that Cejudo fights and he's gone into this one clean, I think that's going to play a big factor too. Because he's like, I don't know if he did not, but if he won like his belt or some of his biggest fights when it was sort of cheated and that, now he's going into another big fight. That mental edge of like, oh, I haven't fought anyone of this caliber without sort of like that extra supplements of the last 4 years. So I feel like that's gonna, if that's the case, that's gonna play a big factor as well on this sort of mental aspect of it.
True, man. All right, man. Well, we've hit the 1 hour mark pretty much. So that's what we plan to do. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time, man. It's great to hear from you. As expected, you're a top lad, man. You got a very positive attitude. Really nice to talk to you, man. And I wish you all the best in your upcoming fight and future career. Would be awesome if we can chat later, maybe down the line a bit once you've had a couple more fights and just have a chat. How you're going, how you're progressing and everything.
Yeah, for sure, bro. Well, thanks very much for having me on. And yeah, it was awesome. Like, I'm more than happy to sort of have a few more fights, hopefully get a belt or something by the time we have our next chat, and then, yeah, go from there, brother.
Awesome, man.